April 20th, 1990. A brand new game called Fire Emblem hits the market. Designed and written by a certain Kaga, roughly 28 years old at the time. The title experiences moderate success and a series is born. 5 games and 9 years later, Kaga leaves the company and starts work on a spiritual successor of the franchise, releasing on Nintendo's biggest competition, the Sony PlayStation. The outcome is not only a very special game, but also an era of legal battles and conflict. Now, a key figure from a company departing and creating a game akin to their previous work is nothing new in this day and age, but Kaga himself did it not only in the 90s, but also in a quite fascinating way. This is the story of how Ring Saga came to be and how it holds up today. Kaga's plans to create a Fire Emblem game under his own company have originated quite some time before his departure. Said company, Turnanog, which would go on to be the dev team of Kaga's new project, was founded on July 27th, 1999, a whole 2 weeks before Kaga officially left Nintendo. After leaving Intelligent Systems and Nintendo in August of 1999, Kaga got to work on his game, titled Emblem Saga, to be published by Enterbrain. In an interview with Famitsu, Kaga hinted at many features that would appear in his upcoming release. He mentioned how it would be set on a continent called Forsaria, where an advanced civilization of Menekites once lived. He mentioned the game took place at the same time as the first Fire Emblem game, implying that his project was sharing a universe with the original series. He announced that a certain shape-shifting youth would return, this character obviously being Zane, and that a young hero like Marth would make an appearance, later stating that the game would contain multiple main characters. Screenshots of the game also showcased an isometric playing field, in the vein of games like Final Fantasy Tactics and Vandal Hearts, though this was scrapped and the traditional top-down view returned. Later on March 21st, little over a month before the game would eventually ship, a trademark for Ring Saga was filed by Enterbrain's parent company, Kadokawa. This was to be the new title of the game, presumably to avoid legal issues with Nintendo, although the Emblem Saga trademark was already filed and registered. Furthermore, many references to Fire Emblem were altered prior to release. The term Menekete, which was and still is a copyright of Nintendo, was removed entirely. However, Nintendo hadn't actually filed for the Menekete trademark until February 2001, 3 months before the game would come out. They also filed for the term Pegasus Knight around this time, as well as the word emblem a year before. One might presume that Nintendo had done this in preparation for any legal action they might have to take in the future. Oh, and Zane did not make a return at all, although the character Narcus in the final game has shape-shifting abilities, much like Zane. But ultimately, Nintendo was not impressed by these efforts and took everyone involved to court. According to the Japanese press, Nintendo had been asking Enterbrain to stop manufacturing and or selling the game since January 2000, a long way off from the game's eventual release date. When Enterbrain did not comply with this request, they eventually received a lawsuit on July 25, 2001. The first hearing was held on September 30th that year at 1:30 p.m. in the Tokyo District Court, and some more hearings were held throughout the year. The first proper trial took place later on November 14, 2002, led by Judge Roichi Mimura, where Nintendo claimed that Enterbrain was violating Japan's copyright law as well as the unfair competition prevention law. They once again demanded Enterbrain to cease manufacturing of the game, and also asked for 258 million yen to be paid to them. Nintendo extensively argued that characters from TRS bore resemblance to characters from various Fire Emblem games. For instance, they compared Slurf and Leaf from Thracia to Sanet and Runan from Ring Saga respectively, among many others. Further arguments from Nintendo include that content in Famitsu magazines were allegedly implying that Emblem Saga was the latest entry in the Fire Emblem series. It's worth mentioning that Enterbrain was the publisher of the weekly Famitsu at the time, meaning they were more or less aware of this content in their publications. In addition, Kaga was accused of taking material and notes with him when he left, said material allegedly having been created during the development of a certain true emblem. We do not clearly know what true emblem is, was or would have been, but a trademark for it had been filed on January 7, 1997, some 2 years before Kaga departed. In the end, Nintendo's reasoning didn't really convince the jury, and all of the claims were dismissed. But of course, Nintendo quickly appealed to this decision. The first hearing of the appeal was held on February 27th the next year, and Nintendo finally managed to win the appeal trial held on November 24th, 2004, some 3 years after the game's release. The newly appointed presiding judge of the Tokyo High Court, Tomokatsu Tsukahara, declared Enterbrain guilty for unfair competition but not for any copyright violation. The court decided that Enterbrain did damage to the Fire Emblem brand by advertising Kaga's new game as if it were a new entry in the series, and required them to pay a 76 million yen fine. Nintendo still wasn't done, however, and actually tried to take the case to the Supreme Court of Japan in 2005, which was obviously rejected. But all in all, how far do these similarities extend? Well, Tearing Saga is very reminiscent of Kaga's previous work, as we all know, but it seems to draw strong inspiration from Gaiden and Faerghast in particular. There's a world map akin to Gaiden featuring skirmishes and rather limited movement, as well as the previously mentioned character Narcus, who has the ability to transform into adjacent allied units. Furthermore, there's the zombie staff which summons a couple of remnants on the map to fight alongside you, much like the summoning ability in Gaiden. There are other things taken straight from the series' second entry, such as this map with swamp tiles and multiplying Mogul enemies, as well as a route split of sorts. You see, the game alternates between Runan and Holmes and their respective armies, while at certain points in the game you can control both armies simultaneously, exchanging units and items between each. In fact, the similarity to Gaiden here is another one of the many arguments Nintendo used in court. But Tearing Saga also sprinkles some of its own ideas throughout the game. Raquel, for instance, is a pre-promote who joins early with great stats and an amazing weapon, but she cannot deal finishing blows on human enemies since she hates killing. In this particular chapter, you can put one of your own units in the shops to get lower prices. Many chapters feature these blue houses where you can teach skills to your units at no extra cost. This unit named Märchen has 0 growths but has a skill that lets him take all the items from an enemy he defeats. Some characters also have very intricate methods of recruitment, such as not killing a certain enemy in an earlier chapter, or having a specific item, or both, or even more than that. The character Litina, for instance, requires a total of 10 steps to be recruited, including having certain units in Holmes' army as well as visiting some world map locations at very specific points in the game. But creativity can carry a game only so far. How much fun is it to actually play? Well, it's likely that your journey through the continent of Liberia can get somewhat frustrating. The game can be quite opaque and unpredictable at times. Much like Faerghast 776, playing this game without a guide is a recipe for disaster, most of the time at least. Now, you do not need to follow a super detailed chapter by chapter guide, but it's crucial to learn some of the stats and mechanics of this game that are different from what you might be used to. For instance, in Fire Emblem, all weapons of a certain tier carry identical characteristics. In Tearing Saga, however, they're seemingly inconsistent. The Slim Sword has only 53 hit, whereas the Slim Lance has 80, for instance. Furthermore, the difficulty curve is also all over the place. Whether it's in the early game or in the end game, the chapters seem to alternate between a true test of your patience and a calm, relaxing stroll to the battlefield. What is also worth mentioning is the sheer amount of, well, things in the game. All these units, items, weapons, staves, many of which you can quite easily miss, even with a guide. It's actually pretty fun to mix and match all these components between the armies of Runan and Holmes, which can lead to drastically different outcomes. Certain events can only occur under certain and very specific circumstances. As someone who is used to the shenanigans of Kaga's Fire Emblem design, I did very much enjoy this game despite its shortcomings. It's not for everyone, but if you stick with it, you'll have a unique experience that you really cannot get anywhere else. With all of that said, Tearing Saga is a bittersweet part of Fire Emblem history. It essentially nullified the possibility of Kaga ever working with Nintendo again. But It also set a legal precedent for game devs who create successors to their iconic series after departing from their company, which we would see numerous examples of over the past few decades. Thank you for watching, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.